Let's move away from lies and fears.
Perhaps it's time to leave.
Free from how you look or what they say. Like a lion runs wild through the wilderness. Free from showing off a living fate. Like the eagles flying high, dancing with the air. There's breath in your lungs to breathe. Say, God, take this mask away. You see, he won't let you stay. Living in hollow days.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shattered Studios podcast. Today I'm joined by my friends, some familiar voices you might have heard. We have Joel and Derrick and Ben. Everyone say hi at the same time.
Hi at the same time.
Now they got to know who we are.
That was amazing and perfect. First thing we're going to talk about today, the main thing we're going to talk about today is, of course, the new Venom movie, which is coming out in just a couple months on October 5th. Ben, I know you're really stoked for this. I know there's been a lot of questions about how Venom is going to work, and one of the biggest ones is, can you really do a good Venom movie without Spider-Man?
Honestly, I think that is what, again, I know we don't talk about Spider-Man 3. It didn't work because we added Venom in. Like, it could have been Sandman, Green Goblin, and Spider-Man. We didn't need a third guy. But the fact, and that's when most people were introduced to Venom. But the fact that we have a backstory for him, that we know where he comes from and what he is, and this weird relationship to Spider-Man, but he's not Spider-Man, I think that is half of what Venom is. Like, we need to know where he came from. We need to be able to connect to that anti-hero, because a lot of people, I know we've said on previous podcasts, a lot of stuff has been kind of dark lately, but it's been dark for the sake of having darkness. Venom has always been a dark character, but he's been, at certain times he's been on the Avengers. He's had a whole history that nobody's known about. And I think his style of hero hasn't been made dark by this film. He is going to just exist as he is, and we're going to get to know that character. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think those are a lot of good points. It's a struggle for me, to be honest, because I love the history of Spider-Man so much and how he came from the comics, and just the struggle Spider-Man went through with the whole suit, and just, if you guys don't know the history of Venom, it'll take too long to get into, but it was originally a suit that Spider-Man wore, and then...
just so it could be drawn easier.
Yeah. But anyways, so there's that history, and I love that from the comic books. I love how Spider-Man struggled with that, and I love the origin of Venom. So I'm struggling a little bit with this movie, seeing it so far apart from Spider-Man, but I'm willing to give it a chance. And I'm concerned about what they're going with this. It looks like they might be going for our movie, and I don't know how dark they're going to make it. But I do think you bring up a good point, Ben. This is unlike other movies that other studios have made. DC, I'm talking to you. Where they've made a traditionally upbeat character dark. Venom comes from that place. So I think this is more being true to that character. So I think that's a good point.
Definitely. It's you were definitely right, Ben, when you said that so many people were introduced to Venom in Spider-Man 3. That was my introduction to Venom, and I agree that movie could have been great if it didn't have so many bad guys. You know, they were drawing themselves in a lot of different directions, and I think the writing suffered for that. But I am excited, you know, apprehensively maybe a little bit. There's some cautious optimism about this movie. You know, the first trailer, I'm pretty sure we saw like almost no Venom. And the second trailer we saw a little bit, and the most recent trailer we saw a ton, and it's too much.
Well, I think the third trailer is the trailer that made you know you don't bring your kids to this movie. Like that's the one that convinced me we might be seeing in our movie.
That's a good point. So when you think of Venom as a character, and kind of going back to Spider-Man 3, when you see Peter Parker wrestling, you know, with Venom and you know, letting him take over, fighting him, all this stuff. What was that like, and how do you think we'll see the same struggle represented in this movie? And the floor is open, whoever wants to try and run with that question.
I think the first two trailers kind of hinted a lot at that. There were a few scenes where we saw Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock, fighting with Venom internally. He looks in the car mirror in the third one, and I think that relates a lot to our struggle with sin itself. Like, there was one line, I hope I get this right, but it was like, you can't exist without me or something.
The way I see it, we can do whatever we want. Do we have a deal?
There was a very powerful line in the third trailer where it's just kind of, unfortunately, the reality of us struggling with our sin, like, it is part of our existence, and we do need to learn how to cope with it. I think I might be jumping to our next point quickly there, but I think allowing us to see the struggle, it might not be as predominant as it was in the Unspoken movie. Spider-Man movie. But I think, especially with Tom Hardy and the whole darkness, but I think we'll see some of it.
Yeah, I think like when it comes to like that darkness, it's like that. Like you like made a great point that this is someone that like character that we've already seen as dark from the minute he was made to now. So I'm fine with that and whatnot. But then just to kind of go as like a viewership, like how like dark are they gonna take this thing? Like, is this going to be something that's going to, I don't know, like be, I don't want to say it too like much for me, but how intense? Like you see him like with his blade arm slashing stuff. We see all this crazy stuff. Like, is the arms be flying off? Like, what does this look like as a movie there? And like we get it's like this struggle where it's like about man and sin and man and like the darkness that we're kind of all born into. That is why we go after Christ, to purge that and to live a new life. But it's like with this film though, I don't really see there being a light at the end of the tunnel. I think that this movie's gonna end, is my own theory, where he learns to embrace the darkness. And as a Christian, as a believer in faith, like that's not something that I can be down with or be alright with. Like I just don't think that that's, because like there's no growth there. You just learn to set aside your base needs as opposed to trying to live outside of yourself and living for God and living for those around you out of love and purity. In this movie, I don't really see there being anyone's movie, and I hope they prove me wrong, that is any sort of light in this movie. Because so far we've just seen Venom, he beats up people, he makes a threat. We don't see anyone speaking any sort of moral quandary that I'm saying, like, you need to slow down. And I hope that we see that in the movie. Like, I hope that there's more of that internal battle. Because that way there's a heart and soul of this film. And if it's just a bunch of cool fight scenes, it's not something that I'm gonna probably watch. I mean, it was just my opinion, and people may not like that opinion, but that's just where I stand.
I think those are great points. And just take a step back. We wanted to do this segment because of all the faith aspects that we could gain from it. We don't know what the movie's going to be like. We're not recommending that you want to go see the movie or not see it. That's up to you. To highlight some of that faith aspect that you brought up, John, that Ben was highlighting, the character Venom, and we were talking about this in our pre-production meeting, it's the struggle between light and dark. It's a struggle between the symbiote who's taking over his body and who's really in control. And I think that is a huge faith aspect that, again, I just want to highlight. We have this, the Bible calls it sinful nature. I know that's a big term there. We have this part of us that doesn't always do the right thing, that wants to do bad, that's yearning for that temptation to give into it. And God says He wants to renew us, so we respond to that old nature less and less and more onto what we're supposed to do. And so I think Venom as a character, as a concept, is great for just playing around with that and just think about that in faith terms. I have parts of me that really I don't like, but God's constantly renewing me. But because that's a process, there's that struggle back and forth. So that's one of the concepts that I think Venom as a character can kind of bring to light.
Well, Venom, it really feels like Venom is a great comparison to reality to me, right? So many superhero movies, so many heroes out there are unrealistically good. Mm-hmm. Like, the reason that we love old school Superman and current Captain America is because they are so good. They are good that we can almost never hope to achieve this side of heaven. I would be hard pressed to find someone as selfless and self-sacrificing and loyal as Captain America, because people are flawed, and Captain America has very few flaws.
I have a few points at that.
Well, yeah. Venom is this, we throw this word around, anti-hero. I think one of my favorite anti-heroes in the Marvel Universe is the Punisher. Back when I saw the Thomas Jane movie years ago, I identified with this character so much because his desire to do good came out of a deep-seated place of pain. And that is so real. So many people, they discover what it is they're passionate about, what it is they care about, the things that they want to combat based on the struggles that they have had. And once they get to the other side of that, they want to help other people too. And I think seeing how we can apply that to Venom, there's this if you're a hero, but there's also this dark nature about you. There's this, like you said, this sinful part of you that wants to do bad things. You know, whereas Captain America might knock somebody out and then drag them to jail, you know, the Punisher, Venom, might torture him a little bit first. And there's wrong there, and there's bad there. But it's very real. And so I think that we need to accept that this movie is going to have some darkness to it. But because I think it's going to mirror reality very heavily, which is going to make us uncomfortable, but it allows us a lens through which to look at our own lives, which I think can be really powerful. Ben, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think, well, like the character who gets attached to Venom, Eddie Brock, originally his mom dies giving birth to him as a kid. Like, this is a little backstory. I don't know if I'm ruining anything, hopefully not. And so his whole life growing up, his dad blames Eddie for losing his mom. And so that's actually part of the reason Venom attaches to him, because he sees and recognizes those psychological defects and then plays off of those. So I think that applies even more to what you were saying, like with our sin and how that incorporates itself into us, is it sees our own struggles and it plays into those. And like you're saying, with these like uncorruptible characters, I think if this happened in real life, this happened to any of us, we would all go through the same struggle that he goes through, because Venom is going to play right into his psychological weaknesses. And I think if, like, let's say Joe woke up the next morning, got superpowers, he's going to have to go through the struggles of dealing with his psychological weaknesses and how he's going to handle his newfound abilities. And it's probably not going to be the most beautiful process, you know? Especially if he went through something that Eddie Brock went through growing up.
Yeah. Well, and that reminds me of, if you're familiar with Chronicles of Narnia, and when you had Eustace, right, and there was this boy with a dragon, and Aslan scraping the scales off him, and how it was one of the most painful things he ever experienced. And you see a similar story in The Great Divorce, which both fantastic reads. But this concept of having good in you, but also having bad in you, and having to have that bad removed, and how painful it can be because of how attached we are to it. And you see that in the trailer. You saw that very vividly played out in Spider-Man 3. The pain of trying to remove Venom, of trying to remove that darkness that's in you. It's not easy, and it can be messy, and it can be dirty and hard, very hard. And so when I see movies like this, when I see this sort of anti-hero character come out, I get really excited if it looks like it's been written well. Because like I said a second ago, I'm going to be hammering this until this movie comes out. I love that it mirrors reality. It's one of the reasons I loved Infinity War. It's one of the reasons that I don't watch them all the time, but this idea of film noir, where occasionally the bad guys win. Because in real life, occasionally the bad guys win. And we don't see that in movies, and I love seeing the harshness of reality on the big screen, because it allows us, once again, I really want to hammer this point home, it allows us to get a new perspective on the things that we deal with and we wrestle with, because not everything is perfect, not everything is great all the time. And so seeing it on screen, it validates that we go through hard times. I'm a Christian. I believe in God, and I have great days and I have bad days. Everyone has great days and everyone has bad days. And so when I go to be entertained, sometimes it scratches something in me. It makes me feel more connected when, for a moment, there's a bit of reality to what I'm watching. It's not all rainbows and butterflies. And Derrick, I think you were a little unhappy with what I said about Captain America being too good for this world. So I'm curious what you were going to say.
No, I would agree with you. I think when Captain America and Superman are written poorly, they seem unrelatable. I think when they're written well, they are relatable because they have struggles as well. We just don't think about it. Their struggle is, for Superman, I'm super powerful. Can I tone back my, abilities a bit to not harm someone even if they're doing that? Captain America, do I stand up for what I believe in even when the easiest thing is to not do that? So I think characters, when they're written well, do have struggles and we can relate to them. I think your major point is we just want to relate to these characters.
Yes.
Me? I've got a different problem. I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die.
And I think for Venom, again, as a character we can relate to, there's two sides of us going back and forth, and what do we choose? What I hope, and I don't know if it's something that I can realistically go from this movie, but when I think about the character of Venom, the aspect of hope needs to be there.
Yeah.
Hope that I'm not doomed, I'm not cursed, I don't have to live this way. It's a struggle, but there's help out there. Every day I can get a little bit better. Every day I can learn to not just control this monster within, but to actually change that, and use this for good. And when we were talking about in our meeting before, just that traditionally Venom is weak to certain things, where it's fire or sonic attacks, because he can't hold his form together. And we're just relaying that again to the gospel. Like, when you read God's truth and you see, wow, what God says is actually real, I can apply this part to my life. It's not just a Bible story or a Sunday school story that I heard in church. This actually has real power when I actually start to follow God. I think it's like Venom being hit by a sonic attack. It starts to disrupt that bad within him, and so the character within can actually think and live a better life. And so I was curious what you guys think about that. Just, again, what are some other metaphors within Venom that you can pull some good stuff out?
Well, that's very cool. Like what I talked about that, like you're saying, like sound and like the fire, that's two things that bring Venom down. And it's like, look at sound, it's like the word of God. Look at fire, it's like the fire of the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. It's like, whoa, you got these two things, this is how you combat Venom, this is how you combat that part. So I think that's a cool symbolic thing. And similar to you, like I think that what makes this story, at least for me, very appealing is that idea that there's hope out there somewhere, there's a voice of hope out there that he's trying to attain. I've not seen that in the trailers yet, the newest Venom. So far there's been zero, I don't think there's been any line of hope in any of those trailers yet. Obviously, the film could be very different than the trailer, so I'm not going to judge it by that, but just from looking at it, And in terms of just like things that Venom has to do with like our faith walk, like I think like you guys said, like it comes after those deep-seated hurts in your past, and it brings up stuff in us, like it latches on, and we make up what the word calls like strongholds, or it's just mindsets that we are doomed to repeat the failures of our parents, of our past. We're just doing, like this mindset gets into us, and it's through the renewing of getting deeper relationship with God and understand His love that we understand that we don't need to be trapped in that, but that there's actually a better way. And I hope that this movie plays upon some of that. I mean, obviously, this is not a movie that's like you're gonna watch with like your youth group, but you could. I don't know. I mean, maybe it depends what it ends up getting in terms of R, PG-13, whatever. But I'll be curious to see like how they turn the story to use more metaphor about overcoming the darkness as opposed to just becoming one with it.
I think the only thing that I saw, because like we're looking at Tom Hardy, Venom, and Sony. So I see where you guys are coming from in the sense of like, we might not get any light out of this. There was one line in the movie when we're going to redeeming qualities where he was speaking with the female character in the movie. I'm not sure who it is going to be played by, but he said like, you can use that darkness for good or something like that, which still kind of we're a little iffy with. We're not sure if that's really going to bring hope to it or if he's going to kind of fall into the character and just stay dark and use it for his own gain. So I think that'll be interesting. But even if you do look at it as that, in that aspect, you can still see like, even if I fall into this sin, I'm gonna stay stuck in it. You know what I mean? Like I can't escape it unless I go through the sound or the fire. You know, which is a little bit darker outlook, which goes back to what you were saying. Like sometimes you just need that little bit of a darker wake up call, and you leave the theater and you're a little unsettled, but sometimes those movies are the ones that hit you hardest, you know?
Well, and what you said there about, you know, trying to use it for good and can you redeem it? It reminds me of in Lord of the Rings when you had Denethor wanted Boromir to get the ring so Gondor could use it to defend themselves. They were like, okay, this thing is evil and it's horrible, but we have a strong, like a strength of will. We can wield it and we can defend ourselves, and we won't do anything bad with it. Swear. We totally won't.
Because that always works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It won't corrupt us. We're too good. We just want to use it to defend ourselves. How often do we do that in our own lives, where we justify the bad things that we want to do and sometimes the bad things that we do because, oh, it's going to be good. It's going to end good. And you get into this whole idea of do the ends justify the means, right? Does not to I won't go political or anything like that, but so a hypothetical scenario, is it worth being able to defend our country if it requires sacrificing 10% of our population? There's a reason I didn't say anything there. Let that awkwardness set in, because it's not something like, I just immediately want to say, no, it's not worth it. And you can start being very cold and calculating and saying, okay, there's 350 million people in America. Am I willing to sacrifice 35 million to save the other 315 million? Or if I don't sacrifice the 35 million, all 350 million are going to die. So if we want to save the rest of the United States, then we have to sacrifice this 10%. And where I see people like Captain America and Superman, and oddly enough, James T. Kirk, the captain of the Enterprise, what they all agree on is that they don't believe in that scenario.
Yep.
There is always another way. There is always a way that doesn't require you to give in to that darker side, to give in to the sacrifice. There is a better way.
And it looks like the evil character in this Venom movie has that mentality. You hear his dialogue over the trailer where he's talking about humans are weak, we need this bond with the symbiote, and
human beings are disposable. But man and symbiote combined. This is a new race, a new species. A higher life form.
So it'll be interesting to see if Venom is the counter to that, or if some darkness just compiles together and blows up.
Venom's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
To your point, John, I think that's a great point. And I think, back to Infinity War, one of your favorite lines that you remind me of is when Captain America says, we don't trade lives. And there's power in that. And I think, again, talking about faith aspects, we don't have to trade lives because we serve a God who already traded his life for us. And so that's where we start. We can't get better because we will it, because we're good enough. We don't have the power to do that. Like, I think that's where we need God to say, God, I keep messing up with this area. I need you to help me grow in this area so I'm not always falling into the symbiote. I'm not always trying to use this thing. Even if I try to use this evil thing for good, we don't have the power to do it ourselves. God can do that. God promises that he will do that, but we have to follow him.
Yep, that's a great point. Joel, any last last thoughts about anything we've talked about, or are you excited for the movie, etc.?
Well, I think just like final thoughts. I mean, I thought this was a great talk about just faith like that, about our own control of sin, and you know, like what Christ, what like the word kind of points out is like, you know, to take up our cross on a day-by-day basis and choosing Him over darkness. So I think being that as something that I kind of live by, or strive to live by, because we all fall short of the glory, but I think that He builds us up. He builds us up as we go forward. Is I hope that this movie, I guess like my last thought that I have is like I hope this movie plays into this idea that He does not need to fully embrace this power to be a hero in this world. He does not need to sell His soul to touch lives and help people. You don't need to do that. It's a hard thing when you try to find the other way to save that lost one. When you're trying to, you know, not trade lives, so to say, or in terms of our own life, it's like I can keep my job, which may be good if it's helping people bring hope and whatnot, but I have to cover up some fraud for my boss. Like, this is a hypothetical scenario, nothing to do with it. But like, it's like, it gets to that point, it's like, am I willing to make that trade? Or like, at the end of the day, I think that it's better to stick to like your moral guns and to say, I'm not like even let a bit of the darkness rule, because we can see from Venom that just one little taste of it can eventually constitute you.
Well, I mean, one of the things you said there that I think is really important to mention is if your boss is committing fraud, Joel, not only do you not want to cover it up, but if you don't report it, then you are helping him. You are aiding and abetting. So
We're gonna talk to you later.
we are.
Hypothetical.
Joel, I want you back on the show. I don't want to see you in jail. So we're gonna talk in a few minutes once the microphones go out. But in the meantime, Derrick, would like to give us your final thoughts.
Oh my goodness, how do I follow up with that? I like something Ben said the other week. He said, I think I'm going right. This side of heaven, we all have a little bit of venom in us, and I think that's true. We all have this thing that fights. Or was that you, John?
It was me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's my bad. My bad.
It's the blonde guy. We just merged.
My apologies. So John said, this side of heaven, we all have a little bit of venom in us, and I think that's true to an extent. We all have this stuff that that's in us that we're fighting, temptations, things that we know aren't right, and I think it locks on to, as Ben was saying, stuff from our past. But again, what's important, I think, is to not give into that. You know, the hope is that we serve a God who is constantly helping us to grow, helping us to, you know, fight the bad stuff that we face, and helping us to help others do the same as well.
Very good, Derrick. That's a great takeaway. What about you, Ben?
I think I'm excited to see the movie. I love everybody's input. I love Joel's input, even where this movie might not be a great movie, because that's always a possibility. And I think I said everything I need to say.
All right, yeah. For me, the biggest takeaway for me is, you know, it's kind of back to what you were saying, Derrick, that there is a little bit of venom in us, but that's not where the story ends, right? There is darkness in our lives, but there is hope, and there is light, and there is life in there also. Those things come from God, and we can't focus on the darkness. We can't focus on the evil and the bad, because we're giving it attention that it doesn't deserve. What we need to focus on are the good things in us, the redeeming qualities that everyone has. Everyone has redeeming qualities. The worst people in history, there was goodness in them. And if more people had focused on that when they were younger, who knows what some of those people would have done. And so we need to give ourselves grace, and we need to give the people around us grace, because we've all messed up. We've all made mistakes, and we're all going to make more mistakes in the future. And it's important to remember that there is good in all of us, Mr. Frodo.
Keep bringing it back to Lord of the Rings.
You know, it was not planned at all, but Lord of the Rings is amazing. And on that note, thank you all for joining me for today's episode.
Thanks so much.
From how you look
longs to
Say, God, take
pray.
this mask away. You see